I want to pull up the story real quick.
Sure.
This is from the BBC. Biden said, quote, "People will pay for horseback charge on migrants at border." So yeah, I'm sure you heard the fake news that the border patrol guys were riding the horses, and the photos came out, and the left and Democrats were like, they're whips. So then what happened is the Biden administration was like, okay, you can't use horses anymore, and now Biden's saying they're going to pay. The reason I bring this up is you were just talking about how, you know, once the left came in, all of a sudden they were much more in favor, or at least,
it's like
complicit.
So the current president down there said, "Abrazos no balazos," hugs not bullets. That was his whole counter. That was his whole security policy for the cartels.
So for the U.S., whether it's intentional or not, you have Joe Biden now, based on fake news, condemning the border patrol guys. It's just continually weakening our security. I mean, it's erasing it.
Just knowing some of the people that were there, because I know some of those people that were there. A lot of them were Latinos. A lot of them were actually Mexican, second generation, third generation Mexican people. They're riding around on horses, and they're utilizing the strap. Have you ever ridden a horse? They don't have crops to whip. They don't have a whip.
It reins.
The reins. That's what you see. They are completely undermanned, undersupported, and they're trying to do a job, which is stopping people from crossing the border illegally. And also, I saw somebody go out down there trying to make it about race.
Of course.
And just seeing, so the U.S., and again, this from my experience training law enforcement here stateside, just went through the whole Black Lives Matter corrosion, which is a corrosion. Speaking as somebody that comes from a country where police are not viewed well, this leads down a very dark path.
Yeah.
People don't want to be police officers in the United States anymore. Police academies have whole generations that are just empty. There's places where they don't have police. They can't pay them enough, or you can't get paid enough to work in some of these places. That leads to a void, an authority and policing void in some places. What comes next? Mexico comes next. The corrosion of the small rules getting set to the side. Small rules get set to the side. You can walk into a Target in California and just fill a bag full of stuff and just walk out, and no problem, as long as it doesn't pass. That's small rules. And I'm from Tijuana. It's not a first world place. But I go to LA and I want to wash my hands afterwards, right? It's amazing to see how it's slowly shifting. The corrosion that's come in this country as far as being against law enforcement. Again, not all law enforcement is okay. There's bad people in law enforcement. There's bad, horrible people in law enforcement in Mexico. There's people that did horrible things here in the States. There's people that are corrupt that are working for law enforcement. There are people that shouldn't be working for law enforcement here stateside that have a completely bad mindset as far as what they're doing. But what comes if you don't have a police force? Like I was in the Portland riots, day 101 of the Portland riots. I went out there.
Oh wow!
People be like, "Ed, you're gonna be out there? Yeah. What do you want to do? What do you want to see?" I always want to go to the weird places, so I went to the riots. 2% CS gas was being utilized against the protesters, which is basically pepper.
Yeah,
and something you put on your steak. There was a snack cart going through the protest line, which is pretty amazing. There was a little Asian girl with a bicycle helmet shouting, "Kill the police," or something like that. And then somebody threw a Molotov at the police, and it landed on the feet of a protester there. Who do you think all of them screamed for when that happened?
Of course.
And the state police walked over, put him out, and then went back through the line.
You want to know what would happen if there were no police? I'll tell you. If something like Portland happened in a place where there were no police, the locals would walk out with their guns, and it would not be pretty. See, the issue is in places like Portland, where you do have the right to keep and bear arms more so than many other states, regular people know if Antifa shows up with Molotov cocktails and I defend myself, I go to prison. So they don't do it. It's because they're scared of the police, and the police allow Antifa free reign.
Yeah.
So I've not been a big fan of, the police over that specifically and over the lockdown stuff. And a lot of people have said, oh, you can't blame the cops, you got to blame the leadership. And I'm like, no, I think if the cop walked up to the guy and arrested him and said, you deal with it later, at the very least, that would slowly start putting a stop to these things. If they started actively, going where these rioters were going when they go into residential neighborhoods and stopping them from going to people's homes and threatening the residents. They're not doing it though.
I was there for a night, and I'm not the smartest man alive or anything like that, but I was there for a night, and I could figure out that all these people there were not from Portland, that they were all bussed in and or drove in and all carpooled in. I could tell you exactly where they parked. I could tell you where their plates were from. I could tell you where they were car surfing. I could tell you just by walking around there and hearing their conversations. I could tell you what social media they were utilizing to organize their endeavors. And it was all a show. It was all a played out show.
Look at the McCloskeys, right? You can criticize them for waving the guns around or whatever, but the point is a group of Black Lives Matter people broke into private property. And when they simply brandished their weapons on their own property as people were on their property and said, get out, they got arrested and charged for it.
Yeah.
So regular people know this. Antifa gets free reign. Black Lives Matter gets free reign. You can't defend yourself. Remove the police, people start defending themselves. The riots are over instantly. It would not look good, and I would not want to see what happens. But I tell you, if the cops won't actually enforce this, if the justice system will not hold these people to account, eventually, the police start losing support. We start seeing things like we did, where Trump supporters and conservatives were throwing the Blue Lives Matter flag on the ground and stomping on it.
Yeah.
And then eventually, they're like, I don't care, get rid of the cops. Whatever, so be it. If you're not going to protect me, you're going to ignore what they do and then come at me when I try to protect myself, like we've seen in the press numerous times. People are going to say no to it.
It's a small
as long as they're paying attention.
It's the small rules that go first, and then the big ones start getting corroded. And I think we're past the small rules part. And,
oh yeah, it's insane.
And again, I come from a country where that happened probably in the 80s and the 90s, right. And this is what comes after, Mad Max level.
The
cars.
fact, and you see the Haitian migrants walking back and forth.
Yeah,
there's no border. I'm sorry, there's no border. You can't call it a border. That's not correct.
It's not there. There's no border, and also the people that are enforcing the border on this side are now even more neutered than they were.
Right.
So you go into hypotheticals, and again, if somebody like some evil entity out there wanted to do something on the border, Christmas right now, Christmas.
Yeah.
Navidad.
Yeah.
This is Christmas right now. And also, who wants to go into border protection? Now, like
who wants to go into any
job?
of these jobs?
Geez, look what that guy with the reins. He's being demonized by the president.
They took their horses away
right.
over fake news. Biden is attacking them, saying they'll pay because people on the Democrat. This is what happens every single time. This is why. Look, the Democrats come out and say Hunter Biden's laptop story is fake news when it was real. They come out and they say Russiagate is real news when it's fake. Ukrainegate is real news when it's fake. They say they're whipping people. It's fake news. How often are we going to see our culture, our country, capitulate to the lies from these psychopaths who just scream random garbage when they panic?
Yeah, I mean the racism thing with one of the most Latin groups of federal police out there is pretty insane. I don't get me wrong. I'm a migrant. Like, I'm a legal resident of this country. I went through my process during Trump's election, which made my process that usually takes 6 months into one that took 2 years. And I'm not a fan, and I was pretty disappointed, but I went through it legally, right? And I'm an idiot.
You just wait.
And I'll say it in Spanish, que pendejo. I should have just sat on that border and just crossed and get shipped out to any, whatever.
I got friends. I have a friend in Eastern Europe, and it's actually a brutal conversation to be like, I would like my friend to simply visit, 2 weeks, come see America for once. Damn near impossible. And then she's like, should I just go to Mexico? And I was like, well, I can't, obviously I understand you're joking,
yeah.
Right? But that's the reality of, like, even people in other countries are like, that's why you see people in Africa fly to Brazil and then come to Mexico, because they know the border doesn't exist.
It's an open joke internationally that, it's a hard thing to get a visa, but it's easy to just travel to Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's not, you don't even need a visa to go to Mexico. You can just violently cross the southern border into Mexico, beat federal police in Mexico, beat them up, cross the border violently. Just make it all the way through, go to the border, and be welcomed on the other side.
That they'll fight the police and In the southern
Yeah,
border?
they'll fight the police in the southern border. They'll throw rocks at them. They'll be violent towards them. They will go through communities, and all the communities are just doing this to them. Just go
Keep going.
past.
Yeah.
When the first migrant caravan came up into Tijuana, the locals protested.
Yeah, I remember that.
The Make Tijuana Great Again hats, which I may or may not have something to do with that. The locals were wearing, the mayor of Tijuana was wearing a Make Tijuana Great Again hat, right? But they were like called racist. Like, all these guys are brown, right? And also, we just absorbed a whole segment of the population of the Haitian migrants coming into Tijuana, which they're I mean, as far as our experience with them, they were pretty good. They melded into the populace. They worked. They're fine. Now these Hondurans came in, and they were saying that they were going to turn Tijuana into Honduras, right? They were saying that they were going to shoot people that they wanted to mess with them. 2 of them got picked up by the cartels immediately.
Whoa!
Immediately, so they calmed down a bit. And then they were complaining about the food that they were being given because they didn't want beans. They thought that was pig food, which is, if you tell that to a Mexican, it's like, but that's the experience that the locals have had with them. And it's not a good experience. And it's amazing that, the first camp they had was next to a school. They had to close the school down because they kept getting harassed by the people there. But the Americans would come in and hand out backpacks, tents, food, clothing, and these guys were like, "Thank you, muchas gracias, thank you." And then you would see that at the open air market being sold and flipped.
Yep.
Right? And it was like, is anybody seeing this? American media shows up, get the kids out, put them around. And the females out, put them here on the outskirts so they can get. That's what they need.
That way, AOC can show up and start crying at the fence, tricking a bunch of dumb people into voting away their rights and their sovereignty.
The last caravan that showed up in Tijuana set up right on the border and right in the middle of it. And I'll post this picture up tonight. I think I'll find it. Right in the middle of that camp, Biden flag.
Yeah.
And I went around and talked to a few of them. They were pretty defensive, but main thing is that door's open. Welcome in. This is the time. The door's going to close again probably in a few years, so we need to go now.
Let us in, Joe Biden.
You said that in the 80s is when the little things started to become overlooked, and then it slowly led towards...
I mean, Mexico's always been... the corruption's always been systemic there, but yeah, I mean, the true corrosion that, criminal enterprises and feeding the massive drug market in the States, and the corruption that kind of produced in Mexico kind of started growing, and how the corruption seeped into uncorruptible organizations like the military. Mexico had the military was like the uncorruptible, like these are the last defense. And then you had the Zetas, and then you had a bunch of generals being arrested for cartel ties. And then that shifted. Now that's why you see the Mexican Marines being utilized more now. The U.S. said, well, we don't use the Mexican military, we're going to use the Mexican Marines now. That's what you saw during the El Chapo raid. But now some of those guys have been arrested guarding cartel guys, bodyguarding cartel guys. Mysterious stuff happening in certain parts where they control the ports. I mean, if they are incorruptible and they are the leading defense in Mexico against the cartels, why is fentanyl flooding the country? These guys are in control of the ports. So,
think it's all for money.
I mean, yeah, for them, yeah. I think a big part of it is money. I think a big part of it is lack of opportunity. I mean, for somebody like me, growing up in Tijuana, either it was going into work for a call center, going to work for a cartel, or going to work for the government. And after coming out of working for the government, I can't tell you the difference between working for a cartel or a government down there as far as how it was at the end.
Call centers are rough. That's boring.
I mean, that's the opportunity you have down there.
Wow.
Right? I was studying medicine when 9/11 happened, and the economy just went in the toilet down there after that because nobody wanted to cross the border and have fun in Tijuana anymore. So the only opportunities for me and a few of my friends, it's like when I grew up in Tijuana, I was a skater kid. Skated. The first time I did any lock picking and stuff like that. Now I teach that and stuff like that. The first time I did any lock picking and stuff like that, I had to break into some cartel house that had been abandoned, and we wanted to skate the pool and stuff like that. Right? So that was my childhood. And it was fun. It was interesting. Tijuana was a pretty interesting place. But it changed. A lot of my friends that I grew up with went to work for the cartels.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.